What's the difference between a wealthy mindset and a poverty mindset? What separates those two? And a big part of it, as we understand, is the mindset of the individual, how they look at their world. And if you were educated in a Prussian style of education, which most of us were, you weren't taught to think critically. You weren't taught to analyze critically. You weren't taught to think critically. You were taught to memorize facts, information, which may or may not actually be useful in the real world. My vision for Phoenix, our organization, and why we do what we do is to become a world-class educational platform, a way to mobilize, equip, and train people for the real world. I read some interesting stats recently. Business Insider and I think Bloomberg both had posted that 78% of candidates that are getting jobs right now are underqualified for the jobs they're getting. That people are throwing their hands up and they don't know what to do with Gen Z because they are just not prepared for the real world. They don't have the social skills, they don't have the discipline, they don't have the accountability. Why? I don't blame Gen Z. Our education system has been failing us for a very long time. Academia, as we know it in the United States, was largely based on a Prussian style of education, which is designed to build worker bees. And think about our education system. From the minute you're in elementary school all the way through K through 12, you're living your life by a bell. The bell tells you what time it is, it tells you what to do next, and you move and get scuttled onto the next thing. Well, if anybody's ever worked in warehouse work, or if you ever worked on a factory floor, it's the exact same process. It's designed that way. It's designed to keep you a consumer and to keep you in the system. Now, I'm not trying to exclaim there's some clandestine force here. It was great in making the United States the world economy, right? It worked. It created high levels of productivity in a working force that was very industrial. However, we don't live in an industrial world anymore. And our education system can't be based on facts, right? It's not like facts are at our fingertips now. It's not facts that are going to drive the next class. It's your ability to conceptualize and think. So we need a new style of education. And what we're looking for is places where people can get a real world education, where they're being taught things that have real world application. And so the goal is to make our organization a world-class platform in educating, mobilizing, equipping, and training people for both a digital and analog world. We're very unique because we're becoming more omni-channel. We can reach people on the phone, we can reach people digitally, and we can reach people face-to-face. And that has never been more important than it is right now. There are only a few organizations in the entire United States that reach more people every year than us. That includes FedEx, UPS, and the Postal Service. That puts us in a very unique position as a brand and as an organization, which is pretty freaking cool, I think. And part of what we need to teach is a wealth mindset. We need to teach people how to think right. In a time when more and more people are wanting to make money and more people feel like they're struggling financially, and there's some very obvious reasons for that, and the economy is changing, absolutely. People feel like they're always underwater, that they're just trying to get ahead and they're struggling to do that. And you're seeing legislation and politics are getting more into this. The middle class is getting wrecked, right? That's been a thing since the 70s, really, where you either have the haves or the have-nots. And so the question for me was always, well, what's the difference? What's the difference between a wealthy mindset and a poverty mindset? What separates those two? And a big part of it, as we understand, is the mindset of the individual, how they look at their world. And if you were educated in a Prussian style of education, which most of us were, you weren't taught to think critically. You weren't taught to analyze critically. You weren't taught to think critically. You were taught to memorize facts, information, which may or may not actually be useful in the real world. And now the product of the education system is you come out with a piece of paper, and no employer thinks because you have a piece of paper that you're competent. Like that's been 20 years ago since anybody thought that. And we know this. For the recruiters in the room, for those of us who train and develop, we know that. A piece of paper doesn't demonstrate any level of competency, and more companies don't find it valuable. Now, I will say the one thing that it says about you is if you're willing to go through that program for another 4 years, it does say that you have the willingness, the ability, and the discipline to complete something, which is not nothing. Right? I think that does say something, and I do think that is valuable. But the world we're living in now, it isn't about the facts you know. My watch can tell me all the facts I want to know. My phone will tell me all the facts I want to know. ChatGPT is changing the world. If you're not in AI yet, get in it. Understand how ChatGPT works. And the quality, as it always has been, the quality of your answers come from the quality of your questions. But it's changing our world. And a lot of jobs that we thought were going to be secure aren't anymore. For instance, coders. We thought, oh, coding is going to be a good business to be. Now I think IT and the technical world is still going to be good for those who are passionate about it. But coding is changing because we're finding that we can get AI to code quicker, more efficiently, and effectively than we can humans. Days instead of weeks. Now we have technology that allows doctors to perform surgeries from overseas using the Da Vinci as an example, which is a robotic device that can do surgery, minimally invasive surgeries, and the people can be doing it remotely. I read a stat that said there are more people getting degrees in US law in India than there are in the United States because we can outsource white-collar jobs to other parts of the country or other parts of the world and do it remotely, decreasing value and cost here. The game is changing wildly. So I thought that was fascinating. What I thought was also interesting is just an article that came out by the World Economic Forum said there's 160 million jobs are going to be created in the next decade and 174 million jobs are going to be taken away. That's a net of a negative 14 million jobs. They outlined the top 100 positions, the positions that are most secure. 22 of them, and many of the top positions were in sales, leadership, communication, and customer service. Meaning, things that are face-to-face and can't be automated, right? The value of human-to-human contact. And we know this, right? There's a premium being paid for human contact. As more things become incredibly impersonal, as more things become more automated and more robotic, we will pay more for a real human or to talk to a real human because it is so rare. We're waiting on Google on some things. I was thinking internally, we're waiting for a document from Google. We can't even talk to a human to ask where it's at. We talk to an AI that sends an automated generated email that says, we estimate that it'll arrive in the next 7 to 10 business days. And we can't even do anything until 7 or 10 business days is up. Not a great customer experience. And more of the world is going that direction. So therein lies our opportunity to be that stopgap. And we're seeing our clients are paying more and more for what we offer because there's a value in human-to-human connection. We also know that a human, a consumer, is more likely to stay with a brand that has a face that represents that brand. When there is a real human that represents that brand, there is a premium added there. So we're seeing our clients over the last few years, they have increased commission, they've increased our capacity, and they're continuing to turn over more and more of their internal teams to us, putting more and more pressure and opportunity on us to perform on their behalf.